learning Likkutei Sichot, Volume 2, Parshas Korach, Chapter 4. Onsho shel Korach haya. So this is a new part here. Korach's punishment was Ve'erdu Chaim She'ola, that they went down into the abyss alive. And about this, very great question. It's a type of, it's because of that, because there's different words for it. So Dante in his Inferno, he has 7 different layers. No, because they learned Tanakh and they saw that there's many words for it. Tehom, Sheol, Gehenom. So they decided in the end that just like there's 7 firmaments, because there's 7 different words in Hebrew for the sky, for the heavens. So there's also 7 different levels of, and it makes sense to them. There was 7 versus 7.
The usual procedure is that the person dies, and then he goes to Gehenna. So what does it mean?
Right. So Sheol is like so we usually would say that Sheol is exactly the state, Chaim Sheol, that you can be alive there. It's like the state that you would call Kafakela. Right.
Okay.
It's similar to
You're
that.
not alive in Kafakela either.
You're like alive, meaning that you don't yet understand the world in its spiritual sense. Rather, you're still locked into your physical, corporeal representation of what was in the world, and you're still locked into that. You can't free yourself from it. So you can't go to Gehenna. Gehenna is like the last stop in a certain sense, because in Gehenna you get rid of the corporeal picture of reality. Yeah, something like that. This is not so dry. Maybe it's very dry. Anyway, so
they stay there forever.
So he's there. He's still stuck there, as it were, and he's waiting. Yeah, maybe. So he raised him a little out of Sheol. In any case, this is the basis, I think, for Rav Nachman's story, the Chacham and the Tam. The simpleton or the earnest man and the sophisticated man. The Chacham there is not just wise, he's sophisticated. And he's stuck there. He's at the end of the story, the wise man, this sophisticated guy, he's stuck in this tar pit. And he keeps telling himself everything's good and he's making it and he's gonna break the bank soon. And the simpleton comes and saves him from it. And that's basically, the simpleton is either Aaron or Moshe. It's hard to say, but one of them is the Tamim, right? So that's a very interesting story that's worthy of reading, because it sort of, Reb Nachman comes and says, this story of Korach is like a story about a person who was too sophisticated for his own good. Yeah, Eber Chochem, right. So says the Rebbe that the Chiddush here is that they were both alive and in Sheol.
Who's they both?
He went down with all the 252 other people.
What happened to the sons of Korach?
So they did tshuva. They did tshuva.
Made a fence for them.
Right.
And then what happened?
They didn't go down. They didn't go down.
No, but they're under the ground.
They're under the ground like everyone. Like everybody
What
under.
What did they do? He says they spat them out 40 years later, when all the people who saw the tribe of Korach died, because they only did tshuva belev. They didn't do tshuva.
Okay.
Hashem and the whole Ganset Hashem. There's another secret.
To take those things literally is a little hard. Like, what exactly would that mean, that somebody would be underground for 40 years? It doesn't make a lot of sense. We don't understand what that means. So I think that it's a parable. It's a metaphor. It's an aphorism. It's some kind of thing that you have to lechaletz, you have to sort of extract the meaning of it. What does it mean that somebody for 40 years was doing tshuva in a certain sense, but not in another sense? So, like, for all intents and purposes, this person was like a person who was buried alive. Wasn't here. In a certain sense, you could say maybe that's like a state of being like a lot of people are after a stroke. And that they eat and they drink and they do a lot of things, but they can't do the most important human function, which is to speak. And they can't talk. It's like their mouth is full of dirt. They just can't speak. So maybe that's a metaphor for that type of situation. I don't know. In any case, אנשים שרויים בשאול תחתית, שקועים ברע ועומק רע, וסבורים שהם חיים. זה ממש רב נחמן. The person is stuck in Sheol. He's stuck in the depth of, and the Rebbe here is obviously interpreting this all metaphorically, right? He's not saying that it didn't happen. He's saying that for me to get information from this, I have to understand the metaphor. I have to understand the mashal. So a person is stuck at the depth of evil and the depth of negative things, and he thinks he's alive. הם טוענים שכולם קדושים, שלכל אחד נשמה מתהלך עם השם, בתוכם השם. So what are they saying? But I have a neshama, I have a soul. So how can it be that I'm stuck in the depths of evil? It's the story of the Chacham and the Tam by Reb Nachman. טענת קורח שכולם קדושים היא נכונה אומנם. It's true that everyone is holy. שהרי בכל מצב שהוא יש ליהודי נשמה, because in every situation, a Jew has a neshama. You can't leave him, meaning forever. ולזה יש אפילו תורה. And even some people have Torah. ברם, עם כל זאת, הוא שרוי בשאול, שכן מה התועלת בתורה כשהתורה נמצאת במקום אחד והוא במקום אחר. But still in the end, he's stuck in the abyss. Because what good is his Torah if he's in one place and his Torah is in another place, and they don't meet? ויתרה מזו, and moreover, והרי הדבר הוא כפי שאומר אדמו"ר זקן, שכשאדם לומד תורה שלא כפי הראוי, הנמצאת התורה בגלות בקליפות. The Alter Rebbe says that if a person's learning Torah for the wrong reasons, for instance, to become a rabbi, to become knowledgeable, to be able to impress other people, whatever it is. So he says the Torah that he's learning is in the klipa, it's in the noga. And it has to be redeemed. How is it going to be redeemed? That he does tshuva, and he says this in the Igeras Tshuva. And he says, and the person decides that from now on, he's going to learn Lishma. He's going to learn for the sake of learning Torah because he loves Hashem. So then, those words that he spoke, that he learned, they're redeemed from the klipa. They come up from the klipa. Right here it says. End of chapter 24. It's not in Gersa Tshuva. End of chapter 24. What's it like? And he says that when you're doing this, that you are learning Torah for the wrong reasons. He gives a very powerful and earth-shattering, one would say, or a very moving mashal, metaphor. Right, so the Rebbe doesn't say the next few words. He says, it's like a person taking the head of the king himself, and he puts him into a latrine full of excrement.
I don't understand. If you learn Torah Lishma, that's something else. If you learn Torah for one of many reasons, not Lishma, you are still learning Torah.
Right.
So why do you get punished for it? Because you didn't learn it Lishma. You do tshuva, or time goes on, and you can rescue all that Torah. But what a very did you do?
Because the mitzvot were not meant to serve you. Mitzvot lav le'enot nitnu. The mitzvahs were not meant to be a benefit for you. And if that's what you're doing, so it's like you're taking the king and you're sticking him into your ego.
If he's not b'kavanah lo learning Lishma, he just doesn't know how to learn Lishma.
Could be that he also doesn't learn how to, but he certainly has a kavanah. And his kavanah in this case is that he wants to benefit himself. The fact that he wants to benefit himself, what does the benefit himself mean? What is that? It means that I'm separate from Hashem. I have my own agenda.
That's not lo lishmo. That's for a matara acheret.
Right, and this matara acheret is like a latrine full of excrement. Why? Because it's exactly the opposite. What?
He wants to be a famous rabbi, so he wants to use his
right.
intelligence to become a rabbi.
So he wants to aggrandize. Okay, it could be. He wants to aggrandize himself, and himself, he as a name in the world. My name will be Rabbi so and so. That is separate from Hashem. He's not giving the credit to Hashem, he's giving the credit to himself. I am now the great rabbi who knows so and so. I'm now the great rabbi who you all should respect. And the really great leader is one who says, like Moshe Rabbeinu, v'nachnu ma, we're nothing. If you want, in that case it was to complain, but if you want to give any praise, you shouldn't praise me, you shouldn't fear me. I'm nothing. That's what it says. That when there's Moshe Rabbeinu, it's very easy to fear Hashem. Why is it difficult to fear Hashem with other people? Because they want you to fear them. They don't want you to fear Hashem. And that's a simple pshat of what it means. That with Moshe, it was very easy to fear Hashem. Because the person felt that he wasn't fearing the system. He wasn't fearing the leadership. He was fearing God because the leadership was completely transparent. So that's why it's called a latrine full of excrement, because it's the opposite of the purpose of creation. The purpose of creation was to reveal godliness in the world. And what this person is doing is revealing himself in the world, as separate from the rest of creation, as separate from the all-filling presence of the Almighty. And he's now Mr. So-and-so, Rabbi so-and-so, he's something special and different. So that, in comparison to the, in respect to the purpose of creation, is like a latrine full of excrement. It's the biggest obscenity you can utter to the king, which is, look at me, I'm here, and don't look at the king. Atufa lechach. So he says the same thing. Chaim she'ola is the same thing. It takes the thing that's called Chaim, Chaim hem lechol motzehem, that the Torah is called Chaim, it's called life, and you're bringing it down into the shoal, you're bringing it down into the lowest place possible. Atufa lechach, the remedy for this is matnot keuna, is gifts for the priesthood. Akdashat meitav hazman meitav hakoach letorah velatfilah, min hamazon, min halevush, min habayit. Like we said before, that all these were meant to teach you to give the best part to Hashem. So that's the remedy. So he says it's not just that you should learn the Shema. You should learn the Shema and also give the best part. The best part that you have, you should give it to Hashem. Okay. It's not for me, it's for Hashem. It's giving it away. You should give the beginning, the inception, and the most choice of what you have to Hashem. And the general preparation for leading your life this way every day is by saying Mode'ani when you wake up. And when saying Mode'ani, it's like you're Mekabel Ol, you're accepting the yoke of heaven immediately when you wake up. So you're saying everything I'm doing is for the sake of heaven, it's not for my sake. And that's it's amazing. Somebody wrote to me yesterday, I was amazed that somebody who wasn't Hasidic could write this. He said, yeah, the purpose of all of Yiddishkeit is to make you a servant of Hashem. So he used the Hebrew word that's not so euphemistic, like servant. It says a slave of Hashem, Eved Hashem. That's the word that we use in Hebrew. But most people, when they hear this, Avodat Hashem, Eved Hashem, so they immediately translate it into an indentured servant at most. They can't say that I'm bought body and soul and I belong to Hashem, because that's not very modern. It's not the way that people think today. They think they're the free agents, they have free will, they have this, which is all true. And yet, that's why the Rebbe Rashab in the early 1900s, he started developing this concept of a ben shenasa eved, of a person who's free, who's like a son of the king, who understands that to really serve the king, I have to be a servant. I have to be a slave. And a word that's not, sends people running for the doors. But again, it's to benefit in the end the relationship. Because the way that a servant is treated by the king is much closer, actually, than the way that a son is treated by the king. Why? Because the servant is completely dedicated to the king alone. And the son has his own thing to worry about. And in merit of giving these tithes, these gifts to the priest, you receive in return the priestly blessing. That Hashem should bless you and keep you. And the two meanings, say the sages, is He'll bless you bebanim. And interesting, there in the Gemara it says, Vishmerecha bebanot. Right? Here he changes it. There's probably another saying from the sages, that He'll bless you with children. Here it's children in general. It contains both the boys and the girls. Vishmerecha, and He'll safekeep you your possessions, your mammon. Ule parach mate'aron. Blossoming of our own staff. What is that talking about? the blossoming was very quick, that overnight this apparently was made out of almond wood. It's very interesting.
Yeah.
Otherwise, why would it give almonds? You can't make a miracle completely. It has to be some basis. So it was actually made from some kind of almond wood. And almond doesn't necessarily mean the thing that we call almonds, but it's some kind of nut tree. And most of the good woods are made out of some kind of nut tree. Like I don't know, chestnut, whatever they use. Almonds also used. So it blossomed quickly. Why? Because that the blessing should come quickly. Meaning it blossomed overnight, and it blossomed in the form of the almond blossom, because it's the quickest of them all. It only takes 21 days. That's what the Gemara says. Right? So it's the quickest of all the trees to blossom, and from the blossom to come to the fruit. So that's what it did, to indicate that not only uveruchaniyut, and it's giving you all the good things, both in Gashmius, in corporeal reality, and in spirituality. Okay? We'll end here. Tomorrow we'll finish, God willing.